Hey everyone, this is Austin Schur here with We Write About Music, and today I'm here with AM Sokoll. He's just released his newest single, Hourglass, and I can't wait to hear all about it. AM, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Austin. Thank you for having me.
What's news in your neck of the woods?
Boy, there that is such a low bar nowadays, isn't it, for what
How did you
constitutes?
spend your weekend inside?
Yeah. How what funny symbol did you put next to the calendar where you're marking the days off before we can go out and
Exactly.
meet people again?
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh, I am very happy to be here to talk about Hourglass, talk about the music. If nothing else, it helps to get to myself looking forward to the things that are on the horizon with other projects, and fingers very crossed for live gigs again soon. But
Totally.
at the very least, I'm happy to be here and chop it up with you.
Cool, man. Well, obviously, I'm really excited to be talking to you about the single. Instrumentally, and even on the basis of music genre, it's one of the most diverse things that I've actually enjoyed in a while. My first question here for you is I know typically your music features a little bit of everything, but how did you decide where to go on this track specifically?
So I started writing the song a couple months after the pandemic had begun. And I think that for one of the more consistent things I've heard of people talk about when it comes to the pandemic and how it is that they've responded to it is like you are very much confronted with the things that you typically have the luxury of just kind of like ignoring and letting go because you're typically out and about, you're doing things, you're seeing people, you have those social connections to kind of distract you. But when you are in that state of isolation that we are in during the pandemic, it's like, how is it that you confront what it is that's standing in front of you, and how is it that you move forward? So like that was the basis of the lyrical content of the
Mhm.
song. And musically, I have all of, as you probably remember from the EP and now on the single here, I'm a piano player, so
Right,
everything
right.
starts with a cool little piano riff, and then it just kind of builds from there. In terms of musical stylings, I am somebody who has really absorbed a lot of different kinds of genres and finds things about each of them that I enjoy. And then in that subset, it's like, okay, what do I want to apply to what it is that I'm doing? So in the case of Hourglass, there was a very big influence that came from like jazz and soul ballads in terms of the
Yeah,
composition, like
absolutely.
very rich like horn sections,
Mhm.
very rich bass sections. And then the other thing that I think really helps the track stand out is the drums. And it's weird. So like I had just I had been in a state where I was really, and I still am. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, but I was just going through this period where Dummy by Portishead was just like going around and around and around
Awesome.
on my Spotify. And I really liked the way that they, you know, programmed the drums to like be their own thing, but also be very much a part of what it is that is part of the collective whole of the
Totally.
composition. So, and plus that just like trip hop style of drum is something that like I find very intriguing and very fascinating. So,
Totally.
um,
I'm actually really happy that you have already brought up the jazzy side and the drumming things because I've already, prior to recording this, I've already put together the actual review of the music. And one of the main things I talk about is how the drums have a mind of their own and like they're totally go down that jazzy rabbit hole of like playing with time signatures and you've got this going on in the horn section. So like that's what I really love about your music the most is instrumentally there's so much going on and it's so unique. And it's just like, I don't know, it's you listen to it and it's like it's nothing like you've heard before, which is so nice in music because everything kind of sounds the same nowadays, you know?
Yeah, well, thank you. Very, very much appreciate that.
Yeah,
And I think that that's the most important thing is like,
right.
I think that each element needs to have some semblance of itself that works on its own. and then it needs to work when it comes together. Like I'm somebody who, when I'm composing for a part, I'm like, is this complete by itself?
Yeah,
And if it's not, then uh very rarely will I go forward without doing a little bit of tinkering to it to where it feels more full. And the
mhm,
drums are a very big indicator of that. Like the drums at first were very much in step with the progression of the horns and the progression of the bass. And I was like, this is okay. Like it's something that is good, but I want there to be more to it. And that's why I went back and did another round of editing on those to where, to your point, it's like they are very much their own thing, but in a way they work so well with everything else around it because everything else around it is so stable and it's
sure.
like very straightforward, straight down the line until you get to like the crescendo point and then
Mhm.
things kind of all start to kind of go off the rails a little bit. But yeah, like I think that when you're composing for that experience, it's really important to like have a, you want to be able to give it a little bit of spice, but you also wanted to all let it have some room to grow too. And there's just
Absolutely.
all of these things that like go in and like all the questions that come from when you're creating and how is it that you find the balance of a lot of different things, whether it's like rhythmically tension and release kind of stuff. Yeah, it's all these things that just kind of come together in this beautiful way by the time you're done with it.
Right. So I want to talk about the production side of things as well. Is it just you putting this all together at the end, or do you have any outside help coming in to sort of polish things up as they're, finishing?
Yeah, so I did the actual composition and the creation of all of the sounds themselves, and then
Damn.
I have a I mean, at this point, he's becoming quite a bit of a friend. I'm exchanging emails with him on a weekly basis. But
Mhm.
the engineer who did all of the mixing and mastering and some of the playing and some of the production stuff for the EP is somebody who I'm still working with. So he mixed and mastered the track itself. And working with him because he's somebody who has been doing this for so long, and I still remember trying to like mix and master my own stuff without having any real knowledge of it and then
Right.
seeing somebody else do it and it's just like, oh yeah, like there's a reason that he gets paid to do
Right.
this
No,
and
it's a whole different beast when it comes to music creation. Can be on the creative side of things, putting together the compositions, but the actual making it sound good with levels and this and that, like who knows?
Well, what's funny about that is I have a friend here in Seattle where I'm based, and we were talking about the EP when it came out in October, and she was like, "Well, who produced it?" And it's like it's such a broad question because
Sure.
like technically the umbrella of production can be anything that isn't even some of the performance stuff too, but like in terms of the creation of like any piece of art or anything in that process, that could all be technically considered production. And of course,
True.
there are different subsets of that definition that are applicable to different genres and everything. But like that's why when she was asking me that question, I was like, we technically co-produced it, I think.
You should take credit. You should 100% take credit for some of that.
Oh yeah.
Don't pass it off to someone just because, I mean, he did a great job, don't get me wrong, but it's not like you didn't have a hand in the process as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, like it's like something that I wish I could think of even a decent analogy for it, but it's just like it's taking a good idea and
Mhm.
making it great. Like that's
Right.
really his role has been taking all of what I've wanted to say and communicate and express through the music and the lyrics and doing it in a way that won't turn people away, like getting them to stick around for it, which is something that as an engineer I can't ask for anything more, is for if you
True.
discover the song for you to listen to the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, it makes
the way,
sense.
yeah, and the way that he does it, it's just such a captivating way of like making everything work together so well.
Totally. So, this is your first single of the year. And I don't want to hop too far into the future here, but my immediate question is there more to come? Are you constantly working on things, or is it whenever you feel inspired?
So it's funny how this works. It My last day of vocal tracking is scheduled for Thursday
Mhm.
for my first LP, which is,
Nice.
yeah. So like when after Chateau, which is the EP, after Chateau came out, um, I was like very happy about the way that things had gone, and I was really looking forward to having like a new phase of the creative process, whether it be,
Mhm.
going out to perform live again or like anything. But then I was just kind of like, well, we're still quite a bit in the pandemic. We had no knowledge about any of like the vaccine stuff either, just because it was like
Right.
October. And so I was like, okay, I feel this urge to keep creating, but I can't really do any of the other things other than just make another project. And so that's why I ended up just kind of diving in and started to write the next thing. And I wrote the vast majority. Hourglass is going to be on the album, and it's actually, even though it's less than a year old, it's the oldest song that's going to be on it. Um,
Oh, wow. Okay. Because I
yeah,
was going to ask, could this technically be considered the lead single? But it sounds like it sort of is at this point,
yeah, it definitely is intended to be, and like it's
without an
so,
official announcement or anything. But.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like if you know that it's for that purpose too, it's just like when do you want to like pull that lever and say like, hey, here's the
Right.
thing that this is going to be a part of. Um, but what's funny is like I came out with my first single actually, though the 1 year anniversary of that single was yesterday, which was like super like fun and nostalgic.
Dang.
And when that song came out, everything else that kind of appeared on the EP was because of that song being the one that I started with,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. So like I wrote I wrote Side Street. Side Street came out, and there were a couple of other songs that I knew I had ready to go and ready to record, but then there were some that, just didn't feel appropriate with all of like that batch of songs being on the same
Sure.
project to me. And so everything that happened with the EP was because of Side Street, because Side Street was the thing that had come out. Well, in this instance, I did all of the writing for the album based off of Hourglass. And like Hourglass, like not as like a literal like connection, but it's just like Hourglass was the thing that was written. I knew I wanted to use it because it was like such a personal song topically.
Right.
Um, and I wanted to see what could I do in terms of the rest of the album with this as its centerpiece, with this as its core. And everything that will be on the album is kind of like what we were talking about with different instrument parts and composition. It's like the idea is for each piece to be just amazing on its own, and then when it's coming together, it's like the sum is greater than its parts kind of thing.
Got
So
it.
yeah, I have just been plugging away at that, and the vast majority of that writing happened between like, I think I took like maybe up like a couple weeks off after the EP came out, so
Mhm.
like maybe like end of October through like their end of the year, and then January through the end of February, beginning of March was when there was a lot of the beginning of the production. And
Got
then
it.
I done all of like the extra tracking stuff like mid March through now. So it's been
You've been
just,
busy. You've been
yeah.
real busy. Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
And it's one of those things where, like I had mentioned, that because like I don't know if without the pandemic I would be plugging away at this the way that I am. Like I wonder if
Yeah.
like the joys of being able to be social and the joys of like that kind of life, if they were
Yeah.
readily available or even available at all, Like they are in some respects, and some of them they're not. And
Sure.
so I think that I'm very grateful because I've spoken with so many different artists who like the pandemic, because I'm fortunate enough right now to where I am actually not doing music as a full-time job. Like I have
Mhm.
a 9 to 5. And so I am able to take just more risks, I think, because it's not like dependent
100%.
upon it's not the paycheck, but like during the pandemic, like there hasn't really been a whole lot that has changed in terms of a financial perspective, which I'm super grateful for. But
Mhm.
the the artist friends that I have and those that are in the community here, they have definitely felt the one of the bigger impacts of the pandemic on them. And so for them, I can totally understand that because they're just trying to figure their life out with their main source of income taken away,
Sure.
that they wouldn't be writing as much, playing as much, creating as much. But for me, because I was able to have fortunately that kind of security, I have been able to just really been not only not stressing about the financials to the point where I can like continue creating, but creating has actually become way more of like a form of escapism than it used to be, because
Right.
there is it's like one of the few things right now that like I feel like I have that full control
You can do
over.
whatever you want. You know what I mean? I mean, not to say that if you put out something and it's bad, like you're going to fail and not be able to pay your rent, but having that blanket of security has to be nice when it's something that you're doing for fun at the moment and there's only an upside.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, is that there is only an upside. Like, because
Right.
what happens, like I know that I can't speak for any and all artists, but like for me, the big thing when I was first starting out was like being really focused on like what people were going to think of the music itself. And then you realize that the majority of people won't even listen to it. And then it's just like, at the very least, starting out, like of
I know
course if
what you
you
mean.
yeah, like in the beginning, because you're just kind of like getting started, like you have, you're like a small tight knit group of people who are close to you that are probably big supporters. But everybody starts somewhere, and you just
Exactly.
kind of need to like uh really just, yeah, keep going at it. But that's exactly it, to your point. That's just like I feel, how do I want to put this? Even though I have been making music, or at the very least playing music, for almost 5 years now, like
Mhm.
I just started releasing music
Yeah.
last year. And it's a different experience when it's like a fun thing to just like play if you're just like doing a random gig somewhere, and it's another thing to like put the commitment and time into the production and like the promotion of it. And it's
It's
a
a whole
really,
business. It's a
yeah,
whole business.
exactly.
Yeah.
So but I don't even remember how we started the conversation off. But yeah,
There are no
like
rules.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, it's just one of those things that I have been very fortunate to want to keep going. And it's timing out pretty well with at least here in Washington State, there's been quite a bit of progress with getting vaccines rolled out, and a number of people that I'm connected with in the industry are like already getting gigs again, and it's just like a really
Right.
cool thing. So like um going back to what it is specifically that it will be, as of right now, it's planning on being a 10 track LP
Sweet.
that will be done probably by like, I would think, end of May.
Cool.
And then from there it's just figuring out how it is that I want to do, because like it was weird, like I felt this pressure to immediately release the EP once it was done. And then
Mhm.
I was just like, well, that wasn't awful, but we could probably do something more with it. So
It's just an odd time to release any amount of music, which is why right now I feel that there's such a push for like, major artists on major labels that have had these finished products and are waiting until, like, oh, release it mid-May or release it in the summer and then we'll tour it in the fall. So even if you're able to put together shows or local shows or something like that, I guess don't necessarily feel the rush to put it out, but at the same time, you play by your own rules. And if it's there, it doesn't matter if it came out in May or June. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. And to that point of artists sitting on their stuff, I tell you what, festival season in 2022 is going to be insane.
Oh my
It's
God.
going to be an absolute madhouse at every single festival. Like all of these acts
Yes,
who like have not been touring because they don't have a project to promote are now going to be releasing everything and
exactly.
touring at the exact same time. And it's
It's
going
going
to
to be
be,
wild.
yeah. And it's like, boy, I really want to go, and we'll hopefully all be vaccinated. But boy, just the thought of a big crowd like that, I'm just like,
Still a little apprehensive, but we'll wait. There's still plenty of time to get there, and things have been, rolling along pretty nicely so far. So I'm cautiously optimistic at this point. But I
that's a good way of
think
putting it.
starting, because usually like Coachella kicks off the festival season. Once that comes around in April of next year, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good about it. But time will tell. Things
Yeah.
happen. So you had mentioned Portishead as one of your inspirations at the moment. So I kind of want to go off that because if you like them, then you probably have a pretty nice taste in music. Who are some of your other inspirations? And was there any specific album that you listened to in your life that sort of wanted you to take this path as a musician?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'll start with the influences. So I am originally from the Detroit area,
Got it.
not Detroit proper, but I'm from the suburbs, and
Where
as
at, if you don't mind me asking?
so I was originally born in, oh boy, I want to say. I think I was technically born in like Commerce Township or Novi, but
Okay.
I spent my formative years in this town called White Lake, which is about, I would say, maybe an hour or so away from Detroit itself.
Gotcha. Yeah, my mom's
Yeah.
from that area, so I think I've been around to some of those places at some
Oh, no
point in my
kidding.
life. Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
That's why I ask. Otherwise, I'd have no idea what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, no, it's growing up there, it was very interesting because um there is well, actually, I'm now just kind of like thinking about all of it as I'm sitting here, but like, so my parents, as so many people often do, like there's definitely a little bit of parental influence when it comes to the stuff that
Always.
I enjoy. And it's funny because even with that influence, so like my dad was like very much a um classic rock kind of guy,
Hmm.
and was like very big fan of like 60s and 70s stuff. My mom was like very into she later got more into like country, but like during when I was like really growing up, she was very much into like folk and like soft pop, like singer-songwriter type stuff. Like
Sure.
I remember I can't remember the name of the specific album, but there was an album by Nora Jones that was just playing in the car constantly in between the ages of like, I want to say like 7 and 10. And so
I know what you're talking about for
yeah,
sure.
but Detroit's music history is so unbelievably rich,
Yeah.
and the parts that I think have really influenced me the most growing up in that area are the things that didn't come from my parents but came from more of just like being in the vicinity of like one of the premier music hubs of the 20th century. And that's where my love for like the like big band jazzy stuff, the soul stuff like really comes through, and that kind of instrumentation is something that I've just always been super drawn to. And like some of those acts, like for those who are not super familiar with like the Motown legends, but like Supremes, Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, definitely had a very big Stevie Wonder phase in high school. Like
Of
it
course.
was, yeah. And then I moved out to Seattle almost 5 years ago now. And Seattle, it was interesting. Like I have gotten so much more into like electronic music since moving
Okay.
out here. Um, I grew up thinking it was like the very ignorant take of like electronic music isn't music. Like I had one of those takes, which is just like, oh, I would kick my ass if I confronted myself at that age, just
I
because
know I used to be like that too, so I don't blame you.
yeah.
But then,
Uh,
after learning about it and having friends that were super into it and them explaining it, like it's very much an art.
yeah, well,
So,
and it's so much more diverse in
exactly.
in its application that like I used to think that it would be. But um being out here and with like the electronic stuff, I don't pull a lot of those textures and sounds necessarily into what it is
Right.
that I do, but it gave me a whole new understanding of rhythm that I just did
Hmm.
not get before. Like because the stuff that I was listening to a lot of was a lot of like the very mainstream soul stuff that was like not necessarily safe in its composition, but it didn't take that many like it certainly didn't take as many risks as like electronic music does, and for good
Of
reason,
course.
because
Right, right, right.
electronic music you can do essentially whatever it is that you want with it. But because of that, and like growing up too, like I definitely had a little bit of like a rap phase too, but
Hmm.
coming out here and like understanding, the different ways in which drums could be applied, it like opened up and changed everything. So I think that just having both of those sources of inspiration is what helps with the palette itself. And then oh boy, the one album is that is quite the question. I will say that in terms of Hourglass, the big thing, and I'm actually going to get the name of the album correct here for you. I'm doing this live. I should have done this in the beginning, but
All good.
um, I had when I was actually still going into the office those days. Um, I
Yeah.
I was listening to some stuff on just my Spotify. And then I had this song come up that was just like this gorgeous assembly of all of these different sounds and textures. And I had no idea what it was. And it turns out that it was a song by this group. I don't know how many people who are into jazz fusion are going to know what it is that I'm talking about, but Mahavishnu Orchestra and their first
Sounds really familiar.
yeah,
I think
their
I've seen it
first
come out once
album,
or twice.
Intermounting Flame, is something that uh that opening track came on and I was just like, wow. Like that was like that was something that I remember listening to that and having that also be a very big point of inspiration for
Hmm.
Hourglass, because that's a song, or that was an album that like had a pretty heavy rock hand in the
Uh-huh.
creation of it. And while I don't think the rock hand has contributed much in terms of like the sound itself, it's contributed a lot in terms of the energy and the impact of it, like
Okay.
the physical one. So I that was one that's another one that is just like I remember hearing that for the first time and just being absolutely blown away, and I knew that I wanted to incorporate it somehow. Um, in terms of the actual album for just me in general, though, boy, I will say that as a piano player, I would be remiss if I didn't include Elton John and his work in there
Solid.
somewhere. Um, I have been very much enjoying personally Honky Chateau, which how ironic that the EP that I released was called Chateau, mere coincidence.
No, that's
But
great. That's
yeah.
great.
But that Elton John is somebody who like from a energy standpoint and from a technical standpoint is somebody that
Unparalleled.
unparalleled.
Yeah.
Like it is like prodigal the way that he can do so much of what he does simultaneously, that that is a good, more than likely unreachable bar to shoot for, because like if
No
I
one's gonna
try,
be him ever in time
no,
again.
absolutely
Yeah.
not. But like that's why it's important to have, I think, at least one artist in your world that's like that, like somebody who you draw on them for inspiration, but you're not necessarily trying to equal them. Like
Sure.
you have them in your back pocket as somebody to call upon of like, how is it that I could try and do things at a level that he or she was able to reach? And I think that it's certainly important when you have those inspirations to not want to copy them or anything.
Exactly. But yeah,
But
you can
yeah,
take, you pull things, and obviously, you don't want to be a direct offshoot, but like everyone that's ever put out music has been inspired by something. You know what I mean? You're not going to create a whole new genre of music. It's just not going to happen nowadays. But pulling from what you know, is there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah. Well, and you know what's really nice too is like not just what it is that you know, but like my favorite things to pull from are the things that I stumble across.
Sure.
Like I love to be able to just be kind of just like the daily mixes on Spotify are really
Yeah,
good for that.
those are
Where
great.
I'm just like, oh, I there's this artist on my daily mix, like I know I'm gonna want to listen to them. And then I'll listen to something and then out of nowhere just be like, what in the world is this? And all of a sudden it's like or
Totally.
something that you forgot about and came back to. Like I was just listening today to one of my daily mixes and one of my favorite songs from last decade is Digital Witness by St. Vincent, and that came
So
back up on my daily mix, and I was just like, oh yes, like these horns are so good. Like
I'm really
yeah,
excited for her new record. That should be out pretty soon.
oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that'll definitely take a priority spot, but boy, there's just gonna be like we were talking about, like there's gonna be so much music to listen to
Yeah.
starting in like 3 months, like end of
Yeah.
summer, beginning of fall. There's just gonna be so unbelievably saturated with new talent. Or not new
Totally.
talent, but yeah, new art.
Just knew everything.
Yeah.
All right, so I've only got a few more questions for you, but I only, I like to save the best for last here. So, kind of going based off what you just said about the people that have inspired you and this and that, if you had to pick a single person to be a dream collaboration, dead or alive, they can either feature on a song, they can help produce a song. For if they're more of a background person, they could just be on the instrumental side of it. Is there a well-rounded person that you kind of set your sights on?
Ooh, ooh, boy. So there are definitely a few that come to mind. Um, I'm gonna go with Nina Simone.
Ooh, interesting choice.
I,
Why? I
I'm gonna
mean,
go
that's a
with Simone.
great choice, but
I because I there's so many that could be picked, but I think for me, Nina Simone is so much in a class by herself in a way that not many or any other artist is. Like there is nobody who sings like her. There's nobody
true.
who performs like her, and there was nobody who wrote the way that she wrote. Like it was
Hmm.
something where I listened like to one of the live in concert albums that she released in the early 60s not too long ago. And even though that album is only 7 songs technically, and I think just like maybe under 40 minutes, something like that,
Yeah.
it's one of it's something where it's getting lost in somebody just performing like and it's a lot because it's a live album and it's like
Right.
it's not and especially like live albums back then in that genre didn't have like a lot of frills to it in terms of like production value or like
No,
glitz and
just hit
glamour.
record and
Yeah, literally like
play.
it would just be her on a stage somewhere just
Right.
playing and there is something about that simplicity and that raw emotion that she had when she would perform and write that to be a part of that would be absolutely incredible. And yeah, I will also say that what's funny about that question is like I feel like for different parts of the creative process I could pick like literally like another different person like
Of course.
yeah, because like a backup one would be, I'll still go back with with Stevie Wonder. I mentioned him earlier,
That
but
would be, I
yeah.
mean, just the wealth of knowledge and things that
Oh
he's
yeah.
been involved in over the years. It's a wealth of knowledge that hopefully he has imparted on people who will take his skills, but it's just like, who knows?
Yeah, no, and that's it. Like, it's the experience of being able to create with an idol and an inspiration, but also the opportunity to like take from them things that you will never get from anybody else, just
Right.
because of the way that they have progressed in their career and the way that
Yeah.
they've gone about doing things. Yeah, it would
They're
just
the
be such a,
pioneers.
yeah, exactly.
100%. Okay, so what are some non-musical goals that you've set for yourself for the rest of this year?
Ooh, I'm very much a fan of these questions, by the way, if I did not make that clear
No,
already.
I'm happy to hear that.
Um, I think that for me, a big goal of mine is, and this is going to be such a basic answer in the midst of the pandemic, but I think
There's
that
no
the
wrong
show,
answers here
yeah,
because you know what?
exactly.
I guarantee whatever you say is probably going to be similar, but you're still your own person and it's still your path in life. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that then for me, the big thing is just trying to get back to a sense of, as much of a sense of pre-pandemic normalcy as I
mhm,
can. And it's one of those things where so much of that has to do with not necessarily the action itself, but the sense of freedom that comes with the ability to make those kinds of decisions.
yes.
um I have, some trips with friends planned both in state here in Washington and, different parts of the country. I am going to be going to my brother's wedding in like 2 months or so.
Awesome.
There are a number of different festivals around here that are going to be starting up again in like September, October. That'll be cool. But all of it is rooted in getting back to a space where there doesn't feel like there is this external like weight
Yes.
upon you. Yeah, like that weight of like you don't have any power in the situation, because like that is so
Exactly.
not great. And then the other big one is, I'm looking at it right now. I definitely want to do more reading than I typically have done. Which is funny because it's like this is what I should have been doing during the pandemic. I've just been
It's
I've just been
okay.
making
It's all
music
been
instead.
leading up.
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
it.
Because like I definitely am gonna take a little bit of a creative break once the album is done and
Yeah.
out. Um, just to like, yeah, like reset, recharge, and get back at it. And it's like, okay, well, writing and performing and creating and putting out music has been life at this point. By the time the album comes out, it'll probably be like almost a year and a half, and it's just like, okay, well, what now? And that is going to open up the opportunity to, read about a couple of other things, and get to, like I said, connect with others again, and like get back to it, like in a way that doesn't necessarily feel in like we had just said, like influence in any kind of way by just
Right.
how the pandemic has been.
Right. I love that. Honestly think that's a fantastic answer. And you know what? We all deserve a little bit of normalcy. For those who have been following the rules, we need to get back. All right.
Definitely. But yeah, I mean, at the very least, like there, and it's been this way for at least a little bit, but the solace of knowing that there is a way to get back there is something that
Yeah.
just feels really good. Whether or not there is like a great deal, because there hasn't been the ideal amount of cooperation yet for everyone to get on board. But there, at the very least, there has been work done, and we can see the results of something that gives us the out that we've been looking for. And
Exactly.
that's exciting for sure.
Nice. All right. So my last big question for you here is for the person that is going to discover you from this, what is a message that you would like to pass off to the first time listener of your music?
I alluded to this earlier, but I'll just restate it again. I would just ask that you listen to the whole thing.
Yes.
That
That's
is, and
most important.
that is simply what I am asking as I'm on my knees begging for someone to listen. No,
This is your
no, like
plea to the audience. I'm
yeah, it's
just
just
kidding.
like creative Shark Tank at this point. No,
Yeah, pitch me your music. Just kidding.
but yeah, no, I think that at the very least, you can make whatever judgment you want to make about it. And obviously, you do not have to like it. I do not expect everyone to like it, but I feel you can't give it the fairest shake unless you listen to all of it. And
Sure.
I know that can definitely, depending on the artist, like there are certain songs that um can get to a point where like you kind of think that you get it and you leave and then you come back to it. It's just like, oh, I really should have given this like the full chance because like this is really good and I really enjoy this. So like
Right.
I would just say, and no matter what it is that you are digesting from a creative perspective, whether it's a movie, whether it's a album or a song, whether it's a book, just see to it to finish it in its intended presentation. And then from there, you can make that call of like, that was either really good and I cannot wait to hear more of stuff like this, or it's just like, I need to somehow find a way to get this person off of Spotify because I dislike their stuff so much. Like, no matter where you fall on that and then those ends of the spectrum, just give it the entire thing. And hopefully you, in my case, enjoy it.
I don't think you're gonna have that problem because there's a lot. There's a lot to love in the music, and I'm not just saying that either.
Uh,
Am, this has been an absolute pleasure. I cannot thank you enough for your super in-depth answers, and I feel like I really got to know you as a person and an artist. For everyone else out there, Hourglass is out. Listen to it. I assume it's on all the major streaming platforms. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to the album whenever it drops. Take your time with it or release it as soon as you want, but I'll definitely be listening.
Austin, this has been so much fun. This has been great. And
Awesome, man.
thank you for having me join in on a Sunday evening, no less. Thank you so much for
Dude,
for that.
anytime, anytime. With that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your night and we will talk soon.
That sounds good.
Cool. Take care and thank you.
All right. Thank you, Austin.
Bye bye.